Well, gentlemen here in studio, Mr. Eric Mandel, Jonathan Regev, there are so many questions to ask. But first and foremost, I would like to ask you, what is the biggest question that is troubling you in the day after?
So the first thing is there have been a lot of milestones in this almost two-year war. And this has changed the war. It's changed the rules of engagement. The question is this going to change them for better or for worse? Will this make a ceasefire deal more likely or less likely? Will this make the Gaza City and Central Refugee Camp operation more likely? Is this a fait accompli at this point of time? And so the questions are, and I think we're getting lots of misinformation, whether President Trump knew about this in advance, where he heard it. It is Bibi, no matter what anyone thinks of Bibi politically, he's a very smart person. And he knows that he must be close to President Trump. The idea that President Trump didn't know, give tacit agreement, maybe a yellow light, if not a green light, is hard to believe that they would have taken that chance. Whether the negotiator and their chief financier were killed or not, I think doesn't make a difference. But we have to remember about Qatar. Qatar is saying, oh, you've evaded our sovereignty. But the Hague Convention says you have to be a neutral actor. Last week, the Iranians met with Hamas in Doha. And 1373, United Nations Security Council Resolution 1373 says that you can't give sanctuary to terrorist groups. This is a U.S. sanctioned terror group. So the question.
So the counterclaim here is whether Qatar is a neutral actor or not. But at least when it comes to the hub Qatar facilitated for Hamas leadership, we do know that there's some level of Israeli and American involvement in the mere request of them to host them.
Yeah, well, we have allegedly hosted them, my country. I was in Doha in May 2023. They told me that, and I had no proof of this, but I think it's now come out that it's clear that Mossad comes every month. I met with their ambassador who was bringing the bags of cash all the time. So there's obviously a complicated frenemy relationship here. So maybe this is also an opportunity for the United States to start pushing Qatar away from being the financier of the Muslim Brotherhood, being so in bed with the Iranians. Granted, they share the world's largest gas field with them. And maybe this is an opportunity to...
of the issue of negotiations. At the moment, we had Egypt, we had Qatar, we had Hamas. Again, trying to pick up this theoretical phone. Who am I speaking to when? And I'm trying to figure out the state of negotiations, Mr. Mandel.
I think the Trump administration has been a little frustrated with the Qataris because they haven't delivered.
Right.
And it's no doubt that Israel would prefer Egypt to be the negotiator here. And I think, Egypt and Qatar are not necessarily on the same page, although superficially they may be that. So the next group may be Egyptians that are dealing in the negotiations here. But we have to realize who we're dealing with. This is a religiously based group. They're not going to go so easily. And then the real question is, what they want is at the end of the day, somebody else can govern Gaza. They don't care. They just want to have arms. They still want to be there. The majority of Israelis supposedly want for the hostages to accept basically the Hamas terms. That would mean, what about the buffer zone? Will there be one? What about the Philadelphia corridor? I was in Southern Command a couple of months ago, and I asked one of the intelligence people, what happens if you give up that buffer zone? He told me that the residents on the envelope, they're going to flee. They're not going to stay there if they can see with an eye shot Palestinians walking up there. So the question is, this way these polls are asked, how they're phrased. And so,
framing of it,
framing of what it is. And, and if somebody's going to disarm Hamas, there's only one group that can do that, the IDF. If you think Emiratis or Saudis or who knows
or Egyptians who are training potential, theoretical, future Palestinian security forces as we speak, training them.
Right. And none of those people want to put their lives on the line for that, and certainly not for the Jewish state.
Yeah. And again, I feel that we've reached a point as if we just want to say things as they are. And in this respect, we do hear much condemnation from all over. But some of these crocodile tears, who is not so upset, perhaps we'll put it that way, with what's happening?
Certainly the Emiratis and the Saudis. They have
MBZ was there this morning. MBS is there now.
Right. This is superficial. They are quietly maybe popping some champagne. Champagne does flow in some of these places. You remember it was just a short time ago that they had an embargo against Qatar. Qatar is a strange animal. It belongs with the sort of, I'll say, moderate Sunni monarchies, but yet it plays with the most radical Sunni Shiites and Sunni jihadists, and with the Shiite jihadists of Iran. They can't have it both ways, and I think this is an opportunity for America to really start putting some pressure on Qatar to saying, enough. We do realize that you have your own interests, and you can't hold Al Udeid Air Base over us anymore, and CENTCOM. I will tell you, one thing in talking to the embassy in Qatar in Washington, they told me when I mentioned to them, and it's actually in mothballs, but it's really there, that the Emiratis are willing to build us a base. And they got very upset. And it's true, but it's in mothballs. But they dislike the Emiratis more than they dislike the Jews in Israel. And that really that should be the leverage that the United States is
capitalize on
to push Qatar, that we are going to build another base, and Al Udeid is not indispensable for us.
Turn back to you, Mr. Eric Mandel, because you know Elizabeth Tsurkov.
I did. I'm leading my annual seminar right now, and a few years ago, she was actually a guest lecturer coming, I believe, speaking on Syria. So you having met somebody who's been taken hostage, but unfortunately what this just says about hostages, taking them works in this part of the world. And they learn again and again that they can get release of hostages, whether it was the Shalit deal, which maybe led to October 7th, or this now releasing.
Every topic we're discussing, and we're not done quite yet, is taking us to the shifting, the changing power struggle here in the Middle East. And again, no matter where you look, it connects us to the greater scheme of things.
What's going on, and what I'm hoping, is that even though many people thought that the Trump administration was going to be isolationist, it seems anything but. And it seems to be the power player. You remember just a couple of years ago, Russian influence in Syria, and now who's maybe the power play there? Looks like the United States with al-Shira. And what's going on in Lebanon? It's the United States with Tom Barak, and Witkoff is going all over. And so it really seems that the United States, and that is a good thing. And one of the reasons the United States wants to be involved here is because the other group, they're not worried about the Russians, they're really worried about the Chinese. And so by keeping the Chinese out, there's obviously a rivalry with their Belt and Road Initiative, and trying to make something else. So the more that America remains engaged here, whether it's for commercial interests or not, but America, this is a good thing for the Middle East if we remain engaged.
Well, the Middle East is a quagmire. You want to get out, but it pulls you back in, right?
We haven't been able to pivot to the Far East yet.
Not quite yet, but time, again, is an elusive term. With Jonathan Regev, Mr. Eric Mandel. Mr. Mandel, again, the Iranian diplomacy strategy is clear. I would dare to say that also the Europeans are not surprising us much. The UN is doing its own shtick, as you put it in Yiddish. And yet, in the framework of the White House, there is an attempt to think differently about what we assumed is just a fact.
No, so the Europeans are choosing to be manipulated. It's very transparent. The Iranians want to have an extension on snapback sanctions. President Trump and Steve Witkoff, these were tough negotiators in real estate deals. And how do you do that? You get leverage. The way you get leverage is to do the snapbacks. Now, technically, the United States, actually, even though we withdrew from the JCPOA as a permanent member of the Security Council, we actually could do that. And we could put secondary sanctions on those who buy Iranian oil, Chinese, Indians. And so there is a way to do this. But the only way you're going to do something with Iran is to put them in a position where they are compromised, where they're dealing about their own survival. And because they also are a religiously run place, but they won't go into a place that they may actually lose the ability to run this regime. And so we have to put them in that type of place.